Welcome back. You're watching Checkpoint. It's finally the second hour of the show. It's all to do with evaluating the week's top developments, where we'll take a look at a couple of issues that played out in the course of the week. Talk about the clamor around Ecitizen. Is this a move in the right direction? Equally, we'll take a look at some concerns that have been raised in all to do with the Kenya Kwanza government disregarding court orders, even as we evaluate the recent trip by President William Ruto to Japan, as Kenya and Japan signed various bilateral agreements. Equally, we'll try and anticipate what will be coming up this week. On 13th, Parliament is set to resume heavy entry, if I could call it that way, in terms of the legislative agenda. That and plenty more in this particular analysis. So thank you for making time. Allow me to introduce my panelists. First time seeing them this year. So happy New Year, gentlemen. I'm joined by Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Karibu sana.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's great to have you with us. Equally joined by Wakili Ishmael Nyaribo. Thank you so much for your time. Karibu. I hope the year so far so good, no complaints.
So far so good, yeah. I would say the same for Nyaribo. You know, he wants to be a commissioner. He's having tribulations.
How's that going so far?
Well, I don't think it's tribulations. I mean, these are processes, so I think tribulations would be a bigger word. These are sectoral elections for, you know, fellow colleagues. It's not a big deal. It's not a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
You know, you're just offering yourself to see whether, people can trust you enough to give you the opportunity. We are many, so whoever comes up, I think that will be the best fit.
How do you fancy your chances?
Oh, okay. I mean, the ground on which we are campaigning definitely is more superior, because we are looking at a way to have less or no interference of external forces within that noble commission.
For those who might not know what you're eyeing, just mention. Of course, we're not advertising. Yeah, but you're eyeing a position at the JSC, yeah?
Yeah. Thanks for that opportunity. The truth is, I am actually gunning for the position of the commission at the JSC to represent the Law Society of Kenya. We call it the male representative for the Judicial Service Commission.
Okay.
Running it out with my colleagues, Eric Theuri and Mombasa Road and Professor Wabwile. So, except for this small challenge, once it is cleared, then we will see whether my name can also be accepted, so that we fight it out correctly. Yes.
Well, all the best. May the best man win. And let's shift focus to other matters. And of course, as I mentioned, Ecitizen has played a big part in the conversations we've had in the past week, bearing in mind the current administration that's led by President William Ruto is quite keen on its push for a centralized payment system for all government services. And we've recently seen the onboarding of most, if not all, government services and agencies and parastatals on the Ecitizen platform. But most recently, we saw a circular from the Ministry of Education directing national schools to pay fees through Ecitizen, pay bill number 22222. Now, that particular move has been put on ice by the courts till February 13th. But let's just listen in to some of the sentiments that have been shared by President William Ruto in regard to that move. Equally, a member of the Council of Governors, who is the representative of the Education Committee, Dr. Eric Mutai, who spoke on that. Listen in.
Some of the monies paid by parents, for example, in boarding schools, because we provide resources for learning in all our primary schools and secondary schools. What parents pay is boarding fees and maybe lunch. We are insisting because we realize that there are illegal levies charged by boards of management of schools that go into accounts that nobody knows.
Allowed the government initiative to have fees paid at the Ecitizen. However, we just call for proper structures, proper information. Because right now schools, children have reported to school, learning is ongoing, and then when we are half the term or somewhere in the term, we wake up in the morning and tell people that you are supposed to do payment e-citizen. In as much as it's a good idea, but we ask the ministry to be a bit more organized so that they are not reactive and be able to provide information early enough so that our people will not be in doubt as to whether is there a fraud or is there something that is sinister behind it.
We've already been waiting here for 2 hours, and really the system seems to be not working for us. That we already had problems with the e-citizen system, I think, with the entry to the country, with the visa, and now here it's also again an issue with the payment, and as you can see, all the people here are waiting.
Kwamba kwanza inadileisha wageni, unaweza kuchukua takriban kawaida unachukua dakika 2, 3 mpaka 5. Sasa hivi unaweza kuchukua mpaka jisaji zima kwa ajili sisi mpya ili mgeni kukata tikiti yake au sisi kukatia wageni na ikawa bado haijafanya kazi.
Tumelemewa na kufanya kazi kwa sababu mashini zilioko unaweza kumlipia Mkenya kupitia e-citizen kwa M-Pesa. Lakini ikifika mgeni wa nje, tatizo limesimamia hapo. Ina decline kwa sababu inahitaji dola.
All right, the last part is tourism stakeholders adding their voice to some of the inconveniences they've experienced in the process. Remember, most services were pushed to e-citizen, including paying for access to wildlife parks in the country. That's been a challenge, perhaps due to a couple of issues with the system delaying here or there. But let's talk generally about the move to move government services to e-citizen. According to those who are in support of this move, they mention the aspect of accountability. We'll be able to monitor the money that comes in, the money that goes out. That's been credited as the best in terms of digitizing government systems. Dismas Mukua, even as we talk about the positives, we're talking about charging Kenyans to access government services. There's an issue on convenience fee. 50 shillings is the elephant in the room. How do we go about this? What's your view on e-citizen?
I'll address it from 2 perspectives where I'm a subject matter expert. The first one is from accounting, and then the second is from a communication perspective.
Okay.
From an accounting perspective, this is perfect. The government scores are 100%. Because it's the dream of any accountant to engage in very solid cash flow management. When you have everything on e-citizen or electronic, then at the end of a certain duration of time, 1 hour or a day, you are actually able to have a global view of how much money has come in and how much money is going out. So in my view, this is very solid. Like you recall previously, even for when you're paying your car parking fee, when you're giving cash, you are not sure whether this money will actually go to the treasury. And most of the services, even for many markets, city markets or municipal markets all over Kenya, when you pay cash, you are not sure whether this money will go to the treasury account. Because there's evidence that people would actually print receipts. So there's the official one, and then there's the one that these fellas would carry around. So from that perspective, 100% sense. And the president has indicated that a number of people who may be opposed to e-citizen are the ones who've been beneficiaries of our weak system. So they've had a cash stream or a revenue stream, which is now going to be blocked.
Okay.
Because you now have to pay through e-citizen, a centralized system. Now there is the matter people are saying that what is the cost of that maybe you're paying 50 shillings. Assuming that you live in Imaradaima and you're taking your son to, say, St. Mary's Yala, and you want to go and pay cash. What is the cost of moving from Imaradaima to Yala to go and pay cash? While you can do it on e-citizen. So the 50 shillings that people are complaining, in my view, while it could be material in some other aspects, but the convenience is very solid. As I see it, the only challenge has been managing change. Because in any society, when you're coming up with a new intervention, there's always 3 groups of people. There's one group which is happy to embrace change. There's another one which sits in the middle. They're not sure whether or not to accept change. And then there's another one which is unhappy to accept change. So the one which is unhappy, maybe there was a good reason to have a communication strategy to address their needs. Okay. I recall a long time ago when mobile telephone was being introduced to the Kenyan market, There even people who used to use pagers, and they really complained. They said, wait a minute, what is this thing called mobile phone? It's not very convenient. I've got a pager on my belt, and it's been working very well. Why are you telling me to get a mobile phone? Okay. Now everybody has got a mobile phone. Okay. Even when you talk about digital cabs, when we got these brands coming up, of course I'm not going to mention any, but even people said, wait a minute, that I can order a cab on my phone? No, I'm going to use the normal one. But when people embrace change, when they understand the benefits, then they'll embrace it. So in my view, all that our Ecitizen needed was to do stakeholder mapping and address their fears. Because right now what people are doing is they're actually expressing their fears in public. And in a few short days, when they appreciate the convenience of Ecitizen, they'll compliment Kenya Kwanza and say this was a good idea.
Okay. Nyaribo, as you come in, there are those who hold the idea that that small convenience fee might actually lock out low-income earners from the all-important government services. Is this an issue you highlight?
Yeah. Who decided it's 50? That's the question. And that's where courts come in. I think Kenya Kwanza and the head of state wants to change the country maybe within the first or second year of their term in office. They really want to change the country, and we can see that. They want to run here, they want to do this, they want to implement a housing levy, they want to do stuff on the health sector. How do you arrive? I mean, these are all good things, but there are stipulations in the law on what to do to arrive where you're going. Okay. You cannot dream and suggest processes that you think are perfect. The Constitution is there, the law is there. If you look at the Finance Management Act, which is an act of Parliament, if you look at Article 2025, 2026, all the way to 207, to 227. If you look at all these, articles, they are talking about how to manage national treasury, how to manage the national cake, and also how to share it. So when you see courts coming in and telling you, hey, hold on, how did you arrive at the 50 shillings and the note 70 or note 30 bob? So you realize this is a decision made by accountants probably, because probably of how they will manage the system and what they needed, and some little kind of change that remains to take care of whatever facilities they are using. So this is where the problem is, and that's why we keep saying all public stuff, public things should go through public participation. So this is what the law says. And it's bad when the technocrats within the Kenya Kwanza government feel that the courts are interfering. They are not. They are protecting people, and they make pronouncement pursuant to people going forward, going to the courts and complaining. So I think there is this passion of trying to change everything, trying to clean up the land registry, health ministry, now housing levy and all that, and it doesn't work like that. It works when you sit down with people, you bring up proposals, take them to the people. Let the people say, yes, we agree, we can manage 50, or we cannot manage 50. So you cannot create rather a country in your imagination or in your view that you impose to the people and tell them, this is what I want you to have. Yes.
So according to the law, what the Public Finance Management Act says, how exactly should the government have approached this in terms of bringing new charges to government services?
Clearly, it's the issue of public participation, yes. And I've just mentioned to you, where is the money being collected at? You're talking about pay bill 222. We have a whole explanation in the Constitution in terms of the control of budget has to be involved. Has the control of budget even given assurance and a report that once this pay bill collects the money, it is true, it will be received in development account, revenue account, consolidated account? Where is the money going? And human beings are suspicious, generally. So is this money going to a particular account? Because if you put money in the consolidated account, there are rules there on how you can withdraw from the account. You cannot just walk in and say, now I want this to go to the health, this to go to whatever. So I think the problem largely is not adhering to the law. And you ask me, what then is the Finance Act actually providing? The issue is the intentions of the president and the processes he's using are two different things. Okay. The law does not allow you simply to wake up and say, I will collect 50 shillings, and this is what you will pay here, this is convenience fees. Even these charges we see at the parks, they are a result of public participation. So I think this is where the courts have come in. You cannot just make processes without adhering to what the law says. Really.
Okay, well noted. Before, even as you come in, because we have to speak to Mora at the end of the day. There are those parents who can't afford school fees. At the end of the day, they sort of do barter trade with schools, be it national, extra county, whatnot, that I will give some sort of service to the school, or I'll bring my livestock in order to pay for fee, since I cannot afford it. Aren't they cut out after this move by the government to sort of make national schools pay fees through the Ecitizen platform? These are some concerns that are rising. What do you have to say?
Yeah, and some of those concerns are very valid, while others may not necessarily be valid.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the issue that Nyaribas indicated over here, that maybe there was not sufficient public participation. It's now very clear that the majority of the people who go to the courts, they don't cite public participation or lack of it. It's actually that they had insurable interest in the process, and when e-citizen or when these systems are implemented, then a revenue stream has been disconnected. So they don't go to court because they're serving a public or national interest. They're driven by a selfish interest most of the time.
Generally, all people who go to court.
No. I'm saying in this particular instance, most of the time. Then you raise a very fundamental issue that somebody has got livestock that they want to go and exchange. Now, if for some reason, and people are saying, can you actually take cows to e-citizen? Obviously, it's not a possibility. Yeah. Then the parent has now got this unique opportunity to go to the nearest local market and actually go and sell those products so that you can get cash. Because what is the larger picture here? The president has indicated that there are some head teachers or principals who charge levies that are not part of what has been approved by the Ministry of Education. Sure. So to stop that kind of misadventure, to stop that kind of mischief, then let's have this e-citizen, whereby when you make your deposit or when you make pay, there's a very clear trail. Now, when you're implementing any new system, it comes with challenges. So if there's a parent who's got cows, who's got chicken, or who's got firewood, then they may need to go the extra mile, or maybe, to use Nyaribo's word, suffer the inconvenience of going to sell it at a market and then get the cash and pay. In my view, long term, it's going to work very well. Although, as I indicated earlier on, it's not a very complicated subject in change management, that you identify who are the key stakeholders and you address their fears, then you give them the opportunity to prepare for it. And you indicated earlier on that every Kenyan has got a responsibility to go to the courts when they feel offended, whether it's at an individual level, whether it's a corporate level. But again, we cannot run away from the fact that there are others who go to court, not because they're serving a national interest or a public good, but they are pursuing a very narrow, selfish interest. Okay. And in my view, when people go to court, it's very good for Kenya, because even in the international development matrix, when you look at World Bank and IMF, when they talk about where you need to do business, Kenya ranks highly because of people going to the courts. In fact, Musalia Mudavadi spoke about it when he was in Japan, when he was telling the Japanese business and corporate leaders that we've got a very strong judiciary, which can even stop the president from implementing a policy. So in my view, anybody who feels offended, if I don't like the color of his top, I can go to court. But is the raison d'etre of going to court very valid? Does it serve the public or national interest? That is the germane question.
You know that I don't like to interfere when he's talking, but I just wanted, we're sharing, and I want him to say, if he knows, why is it that it will be the head of state coming on media to discuss that we must implement this through this pay bill? Why is it not his technocrats, his people, who have gone through maybe weeks or months of, testing the system, going through the minister or the principal secretary to say that this is what we intend to work on. We are trying to compare this with stakeholders and donors or whoever, so that they prepare the citizens. Why does it come from State House with all the heavy weather? That is the head of state. And then everybody has to scamper to implement what the head of state has said. This is what we say is the problem in terms of process. This is definitely a noble idea to make sure that national collection is done through a kitty. But you've seen tourists are complaining that the program has not, I mean, the pay bill has not started accepting, you know, dollars, maybe through Global Pay or whatever. Yeah. So why should you come with such high authority and then start to deal with smaller mistakes? Why can't it start from the people? They do a test, you know, within a certain month, and then the minister comes in and says, you know, it should be, by the time it goes that level, it should be tamper-proof. This is where the courts come in. They are telling the head of state, just like BBI, you cannot start certain programs. They must start from the people, or at least people must be given a chance to, you know, resonate with the program and accept or reject it. Yeah. Then, even if it is implemented, if you can demonstrate that we are giving people a chance, that's it. But the intention is good, definitely. I mean, it will stop a lot of pilferage, a lot of, you know, wastage of funds, and like he said himself, the head of state, like, you cannot come in and say, we want 6,000 from your child because we want to appreciate some teacher, you know, stuff like that. So I mean, I hope teachers don't roast me. Yeah. But the point is, you cannot simply pick money from, you know, parents, which we don't know where it goes, and there's no accountability. But the way it is being implemented is coming from huge excitement and kind of force. And I think the men around the president should clearly explain to him that actually the program is liked. But I think they are only worried that you haphazardly declare it, and then we have to follow what you have said. This is where the problem is. Yes.
Okay, and just to note the observations that were recorded by the tourism stakeholders, that's from last year at a point where there was a downtime on the system. So it's been said that it's a good thing in terms of accountability. He spoke to holes in terms of the process, and we'll get to that even as we take a look at the point of disregarding court orders. But we have so many services onboarded onto Ecitizen. If you want a marriage certificate, death certificate, all that, including other processes. So when there's a downtime on such a critical platform that's supposed to offer services, it definitely leaves Kenyans inconvenienced. Yet it's supposed to be a point of convenience that I don't have to walk to a Huduma center or whatnot to get services, that I can get them through a click of the phone. How do we go about certain issues in terms of downtime? There were issues that the Ecitizen was hacked, was it, last year, which they allayed later on. So to make sure that, you know, we're giving a product that is ready for use by the citizens.
Yeah, now the people who are coming up with this system, they must pay attention to business continuity. In any business that you are running, whatever system you are doing, you must have a plan B. If you're running a business like this and you rely on Kenya Power, you must have a standby generator that will kick in if you don't have this kind of facility. Mm-hmm. So there's a very valid expectation from Kenyans that the people who put together this system have got a business continuity plan. That in case of a hitch, that is why they're supposed to do scenario analysis, state analysis, you know, sit in a room and ask themselves what can go wrong with this system, and ensure that they have addressed everything. Because the way you indicated earlier on, when Mura wants a marriage certificate or they want a passport, they want to go to Ecitizen, make their payment, and get the service. So they will register serious offense if there is a downtime. Okay. And this is just not limited to maybe the government. Mm-hmm. Anybody offering a service, because you know there are some other service providers that are, if there is a downtime, then Kenya generates into a crisis. So that's very valid expectation that if you've been given the responsibility of running Ecitizen, Mura does not want excuses that there is a downtime. No. When you got a contract with Kenya Power, when you go home, when you switch on the lights, you expect that there's going to be power in your residence. True. Now, if there's not going to be power, then you need to be given a warning in advance. In mature economies like Japan, you can predict that there's not going to be a power blackout. And if there's going to be a power blackout, they'll even give you a warning in advance so that you prepare. So in my view, we must have a system of penalties that if you're a public servant of rank and this is your department, if there's any downtime, we don't expect you to be giving us statements explaining the problem, because Mura does not want to read a note saying this is the problem, because Mura has already experienced the problem. Mura wants a service.
Solution.
And in my view, and I don't know why he's in hurry, in my view, people must be penalized.
Because
people must be penalized because of downtime.
Okay. You know, he's saying good points, then he lives where he sees that he could easily fall off the cliff. The issue of downtimes, for example, I've worked in the telcos before even starting, before coming to law practice. I understand buying bandwidth and then distributing it to people, you know, this kind of thing. Fiber now we have, and Wi-Fi and all that, MiFi. The issue with downtimes of our systems is procurement. There is nothing else. Kenya, in fact, is one of the countries with the best interconnectivity, probably compared to Ethiopia and South Africa now. The problem is procurement. What kind of Cisco gadgets is the ministry going to buy to implement these? That is the issue. So, because of course, you know, there are people who are taking advantage of the procurement chain and process, they will quote for the 2 billion gadget, but bring in the 200 million gadget. So you brought into the country a poor, that's why you find these things are stopped by either the procurement tribunal or the courts. In fact, you will continue blaming the courts. But you know, who are these judges? Are people who have been in law practice, private practice all the time. They know these things because they've handled such clientele, you know, who have come to complain that we won this tender, but we didn't, we were not awarded. So the issue is, when you see bad connectivity in the country, it's not because we are bad in infrastructure even. The issue is you quote on the higher side, but because of corruption, you bring in the lowest. So otherwise, I don't expect Ecitizen, we had these teething problems with the carrier system, if you remember, the SIMPA system, the whatnot, when they started. Even, you know, doing your entry on your returns, VAT or, you know, income tax. We used to have these things. Sure. During the last week, you just can't access. They came around it, they knew they were losing money, so we have to do away with the corruption. They brought in the best systems. Today, you access KRA, any other, you know, even from your mobile phone, you do your returns. Okay. So this must I think when your friends from government meet, please give them proper communication, you know, approach, and tell them that if we can eliminate corruption and digitize all our, because how can you create a pay bill which is collecting money from all over the world, and then all of a sudden it goes down for about 5 minutes, you know, even for 5-10 minutes, you've lost millions of shillings. So
quite true.
So it's all about procurement.
Let me just buttress his points. And I'll not name names for fear of libel slander. A leading private sector organization in Kenya responsible for financial payments had a downtime, and I don't think it was an issue of procurement. An agency in the UK responsible in the aviation sector had a downtime. I don't think it was an issue of Kenya procurement. So it happens. So for Nyaribo to speak that it's a procurement in the government of Kenya leading to downtime in a private agency in Kenya or a UK agency in Kenya is stretching the conversation. Okay. Downtimes occur even to the best run organizations. The issue is that the organization, as it demonstrated that they've got a plan B or backup plans which can deliver, and when you identify the problem, is there a penalty? Because if you've got downtime and nobody takes responsibility, then I can bet my head it's going to recur.
But this must, honestly, look at how we use our phones, for example, to send money. You said we don't name names now, fine. Look at how, compare the number of times we have lights going off and the number of times we really go down on our sort of banking on our mobile phones. Why doesn't it? That is a company that looks at the international standards and ensures that we do not want to be associated with anything funny or, you know, procurement processes. Right. But you look at how, I mean, I'm not sure we will complete this show before the lights go off. They also go off at the airport.
Good thing we have a plan B and a plan C, as he mentioned. Anyway, I think another critical issue we definitely need to look at is the adequate internal controls and risk management systems especially when it comes to ambiguity of finances transferred through Ecitizen. Because looking at previous financial years, the Auditor General has actually reported inconsistencies between amounts reported to have been transferred on Ecitizen and amounts received by state agencies. Case in point, NTSA in the year June 2020, that ended June 2020, Ecitizen indicated they transferred 1.1 billion. NTSA records, according to the Auditor General, they received 1 billion. So a difference of 28 million. So it's proper to know those risk management systems should be in place.
You need to know what the law says about that. Any public officer, I think that should be 227 or something like that. You can check on the Constitution. Any public officer who actually pilferages money that way, they say it is 2 trillion, but in the actual sense, it was 4 trillion that was collected. Any public officer who does that, and this is in the range of the control of budget, treasury officials and all that, can be compelled to pay even after he has left office. I'll get to the section, I'll read for you before we leave here. So there is always a buffer that you cannot just walk into public office and do what you want to do. We can observe what you are doing now, but the moment another regime comes to power, they will, without harassing you, go through the court, go through the legal process to actually tell you you've got to pay if you sanctioned a payment which was actually fake, which wasn't there, or more than the amount that actually was required to be transferred. No. That is there in the Constitution, yes.
Now, the beauty of the e-system that some people don't want to use the e-citizen is now you have that audit trail. The moment you execute a transaction on your mobile phone to any government office, there's a very solid audit trail. So anybody who has compromised that money, as Nyariba has indicated, should be behind bars. Okay. And that is a basic forensic accounting. I mean, a student who's just started doing accounting can pick up that. Now, the germane question is, having realized that there's a discrepancy between the funds collected, is there somebody behind bars? That is the elephant in the room. Is there somebody behind bars? Yeah. Is there a penalty for somebody going with Mura's resources? Because if there's no penalty, you cannot blame the system. The system has already told you Mura's resources have been stolen. Okay. And there's nobody standing time.
And Jesse, that's why we are saying here the system is the government. Let State House and Executive, Parliament and Judiciary appreciate that people who go into those offices are powerful. They are considered by masses as if they are the system themselves. Okay. So that they don't really care what the system says, what the system is, and what the law says. They care about what has been spoken from the higher office. And that's where we are going wrong. Because if we all went behind the systems, we will make money, the country will be rich. I mean, there will be no need for somebody to say there's corruption, because we are all going behind the system. We will be dealing with only one thing: system analysis and who is responsible for, as he says, pilfering this or that kind of money. So the problem with us is we still have to chest thump. We are still in that archaic period where somebody has to say, Mimi ndio kusema, we have to do this. That is actually really primitive. If we all went behind the system and say, we all must go behind the system, this country will be a great country.
Actually, with the e-system, you can point who has misappropriated resources. So the question I'm asking Nyaribo, because he's a lawyer and he has quoted the relevant acts, how come these guys are not behind bars?
That's what I'm telling you.
Let's not blame the system.
Actually, there's somebody who has come and said, I was told to withdraw this money. On national television, we can go back on the clips. He says, I was told I must withdraw this money. So now you keep wondering, who told you? I was told by the biggest man in the country, the CEO of the nation. So you arrest this person. That's what I'm trying to tell you. We are still a growing economy. We must appreciate that we all, from State House to the poor boy and girl in the street, we must accept to go behind the system for the good of the country. But if we are saying, no, I am beyond the law, I am the one to say this, then that's why we'll have poverty in the country and our economy will never grow like the other economies, yes.
All right, so a lot has been said in the public circles, especially on matters to do with the relationship between the executive and the judiciary, where some have painted a picture of perhaps a supremacy war ongoing between these two arms of government when it comes to the issue of court orders, where we've had of high individuals from the Kenya Kwanza government poking holes into some of the court orders that have been given that they say is simply slowing the government's agenda. On the flip side, there are those who are quite vocal about the need for the courts, as they definitely give room for those who have discrepancies or issues to articulate them within the law. So let's listen in to what President William Ruto had to say recently due to that particular move on Ecitizen platform. Remember, the president stuck to his guns, mentioning that perhaps that directive to pay school fees should roll through. And he mentioned this in Japan, saying that he's ready to make unpopular decisions for the benefit of Kenya. Just listen in.
And that is why I don't mind, People call me names. But you see, when you are doing the right thing, your conscience is clear that you are doing the right thing. And I will do the right thing for our country, irrespective of what names people call me, including Zakayo.
Watu lazima walipe kupitia Ecitizen. Na wale makatela ambao wanakimbia, wanakwenda kotini kupata order, hatutachoka. Kwa sababu tukishakuwa na single treasury account moja hivi, na pia watu walipe kupitia mfumo wa 222, serikali itajua ni pesa ngapi zinaingia kila siku.
So just to quote the government spokesperson, watu lazima walipe na e-citizen. Yes. So as a lawyer, when you hear of such terms from the government, it's either our way or the highway. Forget about the courts. You get that picture.
Jesse, honestly, it's not even a law issue. It is just a matter of decency. And this is a civilized nation. We are a democracy. Democracy is very expensive. We agree. When you say, I will do the right thing, and I don't care what people, that's like you're in a church. You're just speaking to people who should not question. This is a democracy. You will have a view, other people will have views. This is not a communist state. This is a democracy. Fine majority will always have their way and all that, but you must get your majority in the correct way so that everybody is represented, both, the able and the unable, whatever. When you just say, this is what I have to do because my conscience tells me it is right, it's actually a very dangerous path to take. Because you go alone forward, sort of fanaticism or sort of, it is what I believe. That is more or less like, you don't think others would have any better view. So I think to avoid that, people around the president should, honestly sit with him, tell him, Your Excellency, we like this. And I think it's a great idea, but the laws we have cannot allow us to sidestep others and just tell them what to do, so that the head of state can appreciate. When people talk, you get new ideas. Don't just fear the head of state and he has called you to be in his inner circle to advise him. You should be telling him the truth and tell him this is what we think, and then he should reject that. When he's alone, he will remember, yes, I think those guys probably were saying the correct thing. So we have a big problem if the way of implementing policies is what is only coming from one side. That is where the problem is.
Talk to me about the legal advice, because we have an attorney general who advises the government when it comes to certain policies they want to implement. When we take a look at the issues that we've seen the court sort of put a stop on, when it comes to Haiti, it put a pause on this issue on payment of fee for national schools on Ecitizen, they put a pause on that.
Housing levy.
Yeah, housing levy, you name it. Is it lack of advice? How would you put it?
No, I don't know what's happening within the Attorney General and the President. But even in the previous time, we had the Attorney General then not agreeing with the head of state, or rather the head of state not taking the Attorney General's advice seriously. It is a very bad precedent because, like I said, this being a civilized nation, you should allow every person to play the responsibilities within his desk. And you should always ask for the reports and honest advice about any particular step. You can't tell a doctor that I want you to prescribe this medicine because this is the one I like. If he does that, then you are going to die. So even in law, you cannot tell a whole Attorney General to find out how he can legalize what you have in your mind. You must ask him for a honest opinion. What if we take this direction, then the AG should tell you it may not work. Okay, fine. Then what if we take this direction? Now that's what is consultation. So I am not sure that the Attorney General, I can't speak for him though, that he is giving the exact correct advice and that the president is taking it or is not taking it. The point here should be that that is what should be emphasized. The Attorney General must be given ample time to give his opinion according to his law school knowledge. Then he has to leave it at that, because you can't force your client to take your advice, but you can give him your advice. So I think the issue could be the men and women. You've seen the president surround himself with people who say, I am an engineer, I do this. If you go that direction, honestly, the country will take a longer time to recover. I think that every good professional, you've seen it, D himself sometimes complaining that things are not working. Why are they not working? This is one of the exceptional economists we have in the country. So I think that every professional around the head of state should be nurtured well by the head of state himself and should be allowed to give his opinion without influencing his opinion. That is the only way the country can move forward, yes.
Okay, and still on this issue of court orders, we've had the president mention that there are some judges, magistrates who are out there and are keen on frustrating government projects. And then the question would be, legally, if there are judges, magistrates who are keen on frustrating, why not go after them through the legal means, the constitutional route, the JSC and whatnot, instead of political declarations on political platforms that might not heed the necessary results? Your view on that?
Yeah, the first thing is outside the legal framework, or rather not discussing whether or not the AG gives advice, there's an old Shakespearean saying that advisors suffer no risks. So you're an advisor, legal advisor, whatever it is, you don't suffer any risk. It's the principal who takes the decision. Now, sometimes leaders are expected to take unpopular decisions, which are still within the legal framework. And in my view, leadership, when you become a leader, you are invited to take decisions, unpopular or otherwise, provided they serve national and public interest, and provided they're anchored within the law. Because there are a number of elected leaders who fear taking decisions because they don't know what is going to happen 5 years later. They may be penalized taking the decisions. And the president has indicated that he did not win office to start campaigning for a second term. He won office to deliver. So if it means taking those unpopular decisions for the sake of morale, so be it. Then secondly, and an important question that you raise, how do we make progress as a nation while we respect the rule of law and order? Let everybody do their rightful thing. When you go to office in the morning, you've got a job description. Please deliver as the law demands you to deliver. Let's run from excuses saying that I got a call from a high office, or they say that a poor workman will always blame his jembe. So let's stop blaming jembes and deliver for the nation.
Okay. Well,
you've asked him, what about this part between the judiciary?
No, I was actually coming to that. It's except my mind. Now, that one, in my view, is a very exciting subject. Because the head of state, the cabinet secretaries, or anybody in Kenya, this is a gentleman who defends the constitution. Every Kenyan has got the right to express their views. So if the president is expressing his view, it's okay. How many times do we criticize the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Speaker of the Senate, and they don't lose their cool? How many times do we criticize the president? He has even told us his name. All the way in Japan, he's telling the Japanese people how Kenyans are making reference to him. The question then goes back to, the root cause is that when the president makes that statement, does it compromise judiciary's independence as an institution? And then does it compromise decisional independence of the various judges? Of course it doesn't. It does not. Because even after he made those statements, a few days later, judges have been issuing rulings, directions, or orders, which have stopped a number of government projects. The question is, the germane question that Anyaribo is not going to answer right now is, do we have corrupt judges? Of course we do. Is there evidence? Of course we do. What is the purpose of the Judicial Service Commission? Is to pick out those people. And the Judicial Service Commission has actually picked a few and told them to go home.
True.
So we cannot sit here and claim that all the judges, we are told, are like Caesar's wife.
Yeah.
There are few, probably 1% or 0.1%.
But then this must tell me, it's okay to voice your concerns, freedom of expression, but is it truly okay to voice concerns against judges, but not go the step forward and file a legal complaint?
Yeah.
You know?
Then correct the percentage as well.
Yeah, you see what he did not, what he didn't do, he did not name names that are XYZ, XYZ. He just said that I've got information and I'm frustrated. Now, you and I, we don't know whether he has filed those before the Judicial Service Commission. So the Judicial Service Commission sits in a very good place
he hasn't
where he wants to go to establish whether or not he has filed the information.
Briefly,
you know,
He speaks on behalf of the Judicial Service
by
Commission.
the way, you know, you cannot demean the stature of head of state to what my good friend is saying, that the president is just, free speech. He's just expressing himself. No. That is a head of state. If you sit with the president here, it will not be the same mood like you're sitting with Jesse. That is the nature of things. So he is carrying with him on his shoulders the people of this country. So for him to go and say that our judiciary, now he has influenced you to think that the judiciary has 1.5% correct judges. You see, already he has already actually won the battle.
No, I said it may.
As against you. We need a forum and a proper debate about what is corrupt and who is corrupt. You know, there are so many people walk in town and they say, I know Judge so-and-so, I'm going to see him for you. You are so foolish. You're giving somebody money in the street and it is this money eating. And we have this. I have seen it on several clips since 5-7 years back, where some people within the judiciary, especially the staff, the lower staff, I mean the clerks and all that, they have been fired because they lied walking in the street saying, Judge so-and-so has told me, if you give me 2 million, he will give you the order. Funny enough, you give the 2 million, the judge gives the order. It's coincidental, and you tell him, I know this guy. We are blackmailing an innocent human being sitting over there. So that's why we are saying, first, the head of state cannot be saying that judges are corrupt. He must speak out. We found 2, 3, 4 in the last 2 years, they have gone home. Now, we must consistently do that. When I look at so many clean judges, honestly, so many, being lumped up and said, these are very corrupt people. So now, we have people now taking other people's land, simply walking into somebody's compound and saying, which order do you have? Because this is not his friend or from his backyard, he throws into the dustbin and says, he land in Yenu. This we must names, stop. Yeah. Lastly, the head of state saying that judiciary is corrupt is very dangerous for the country. Because when you want to do that arbitration between you and another international organization, the other team will say, no, we are afraid because in your country, things are very corrupt, so we cannot subscribe to, we cannot ascribe to your laws. Let us refer to the laws of Cayman Island or the laws of United Kingdom. Yes. So he is the last person. In fact, we expect him to be kind enough to come back and say, we have now sat with the Chief Justice, we have looked at everything and we find that the judges are actually correct. But we have also agreed that continuously we will do a cleanup, so we will be finding who is not right. That will help the country. But to come up and say that, all of you are corrupt, that is really the worst thing you can do for the nation.
And do you pick issue with the president, in extension the executive, having a sit down with the judiciary, Chief Justice Martha Koome? Because there are those who mention that
I can tell you, no, I have an answer already.
Of bad times coming.
No. Let me tell you, it's only timing.
Okay.
It is just the timing. Having attacked them, then calling them. But corporate governance demands that institutions come together. And again, they did not go into some dark place. They met, whether you meet at State House or you agree to meet in the Serena or you go to the judiciary, in proper management. And this is where I think some legal professionals actually mislead others, mislead the country. That meeting was not to influence anyone. The issue was, we have had a lot of fights recently publicly, and that sitting together is good. And Jess, you didn't ask me this, but honestly, where the country is going now, the head of state needs to sit down with the opposition and also neutralize this kind of, because people think that Everything is gone and they're desperate.
All right.
I know Dismas will not like it now, but I think something like a government of national unity, a grand unity, one more time, could actually cool down the temperatures, and people will now start accepting. But if the president is going to isolate himself with his technocrats, quote unquote, I think that the country will continue to feel the pain of what it's feeling still here.
Interesting point. Anyway, away from matters grand national unity and whatnot, let's talk about President's diary. Just last week, he was in Japan marking numerous trips that have been made by the president, and he mentions this is all for the benefit of the country. He's Kenya's #1 agent, so he's definitely going there to seek better fortunes for the country. The recent trip to Japan, away from the debate whether it was a state visit or an official visit, looking at what we can benefit as a country. Is that trip quite important to Kenya and our economic situation as it is right now? Dismas, briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as far as I'm concerned, the panacea to Kenya's economic challenges is economic diplomacy. And Japan is a very reliable partner. And the kind of resources that Kenya has gotten, whether it's grants or loans, they're very exciting. It's a very exciting proposition. Actually, if you take a loan from the Japanese authorities, it can only be comparable to instruments you get from the World Bank or IMF. The interest rates are very low. They give you grace periods sometimes of up to 15 years, then the repayment of up to 40 years. So it's very exciting. And the Japanese have done many projects in Kenya. You can talk about Jequat, you can talk about Kemri. I know they've given resources for oxygen production in Kenya. And as I see the Kenya Kwanza economic diplomacy is really anchored on 3 things. First of all, promoting Kenyan exports, growing and getting new markets. Number 2, positioning Kenya as an FDI destination. And number 3, creating international opportunities for Kenyans. You remember we've had a conversation around this, that let's send any talent in Kenya that wants to go and do business in Japan or China, let them go. So that at some stage you've got a Kenyan DNA or footprints spread all over the world. And couple that, you see what his Minister for Foreign Affairs has been doing, Musalia Mudavadi. That he went to China where he cut a nice deal. Then he went to the US where he cut a nice deal, and now Japan. And this shows that with all this economic diplomacy, it's beginning to bear fruit. It's beginning to give us dividends. Right. And in my view, this is something we must encourage them to do. And the point that Nyaribo raised, and he said that I wouldn't support it, about these various leaders meeting. In my view, they can have a cup of tea every single day, because they're having a cup of tea in the interest of morale. You remember retired Chief Justice Maraga wanted to have a meeting with President Kenyatta. President Kenyatta was not available, and the Kenyans said, wait a minute, President Kenyatta, you have no time for a cup of tea with Justice Maraga. Even to the extent that Maraga was doing a news conference outside his office, he would attend public rallies and say that he's made to walk for a distance, or his seat is not in a prominent place, throwing tantrums. And here comes Justice Koome, who says, I'd like to have a meeting with President Ruto. President Ruto grants the meeting, and then the same Kenyans say, wait a minute, why are you meeting? What are you talking about? And you see the meeting was not held in secrecy. Because I saw the Chief Justice was accompanied by senior officers from the Judiciary. The same thing happened with President Ruto, and also from the Speaker. So in my view, and as you said about corporate governance, if these meetings are serving Mura's interest, we must support them to the hilt. And then this idea of people saying that, wait a minute, President Ruto took office to create jobs for Kenyans only in Kenya. It doesn't work that way. Look at a country called Philippines. The amount of money which goes back to Philippines as remittances is amazing. Even here in Kenya, I think the money we get from his village mates who are in Texas, who are in Minnesota, is much higher than from tea and coffee and tourism combined. So, as far as I'm concerned, let's encourage people to go all over, and as a matter of urgency, we need to review our language policy so that outsiders are speaking English, Kiswahili, and mother tongue. We had French, Arabic, Spanish, so that our graduates are ready for the global markets.
Well noted, Dismas. As we finalize, you've noted that it's important for the arms of government to meet. They're not only independent, but interdependent. Speaking of one arm of the government, and briefly from both of you, because Parliament is set to resume this week on the 13th of February, a full entry for the members of Parliament, but of most concern is the Affordable Housing Bill 2023, which will be debated once Parliament resumes, and it will be seeking the reintroduction of that halted housing levy. Or was it not halted? Anyway, so Nyaribo, your take on the interest, especially that housing levy. What do you make of it? Was the grey area sorted? We had from the Attorney General while he was meeting the House committees this week mentioned that they sorted out that issue about the unconstitutional. What other issues should we look at?
Well, I think we were here with one of the members of Parliament who said they did a sample kind of approach. You know, they picked, I think statistics, he said they picked some people and they concluded now they have done proper public participation. There is a bill on public participation in Parliament and it's yet to be implemented into law or enacted into law. But the issue, even within the parameters of the Constitution, public participation is to involve people, is to be all inclusive. So when they go back to Parliament, I'm sure they will give us a report on what they did, where they did the public participation. I don't know if they met my grandmother, my aunties and all that in the village and my mother. If they didn't, definitely that part of the world will say, no, we didn't. Because they say they did public participation in about 22 counties.
20 counties, yeah.
Yeah, how is that representative? Public participation means the public must be given, everyone who wants to attend. So you do notices, you tell them we shall be in town hall on this day, on that day. Even if you come 5, but at least they gave the notice. But you can't say we are going to choose 2 counties in Eastern and others here and there, and then that would be, I don't think that is proper public participation. So let's wait and see. But the point I wanted to bring in again and again is this is why, Jesse, we are saying Kenya Kwanza would implement a lot of these good policies if they can have an all-inclusive government. At least that is what is coming out clearly. And I saw the head of state praising Raila the other day so much, saying, oh, Raila is now agreeing with us. I think they should find a way to now talk and say, okay, fine, we are now past the, all these, fights about who won, who didn't. Because even this question of the 2 committees wanting to audit the the other year's election, it can be resolved by a simple sitting and a creation of a government of national unity. That way, the mood today that only 8-10 people in Kenya Kwanza are benefiting will dissipate. So I think I strongly propose that the 2 should come together so that the citizens can calm down and go to work. In terms of visiting Japan and all that, Kenya has people all over the world. It's not because of Kenya Kwanza that we now have, it's not actually Kenya Kwanza or Azimio for that matter. Kenyans are enterprising people. And what is killing them is the extra taxes. That is it. They want to send so much money to the country, but the kind of taxes, now there's one for cats and another one for not rats. for chicken. So I tend to think that actually Kenyans are enterprising. They need to be given that opportunity to continue to be successful. But when you're trying to put blockades and walls all over, I think that's where the problem is. Yes. Let us come together as a country and form a government of national unity, if you ask me.
As you finalize expectations on Bunge.
In my view, Murad did not vote for a government of national unity. So for Nyaribo to suggest a government of national unity,
big no, eh?
Yeah, I mean, in my view, that is, then we shouldn't even have an election. Number 2, I'm not sure that the National Assembly has passed a law to tax rats. I mean, I don't know. I remember at some stage a former Minister for Finance said, look for rats wherever they are and consume them. So I don't know whether it's going to be taxed as a rodent or as a delicacy. But for the National Assembly, this is where now public participation matters. Instead of the members of, especially Azimio, going to the funerals and weddings and issuing threats, let them engage in intellectual conversations at the National Assembly. Because, a number of them in the Senate and even the National Assembly, actually they boycott some sessions. So when Murai elected them to office, he expects them to go to the National Assembly or Senate and engage in very solid conversations. And for them to stop crying that tunaomba serikali, and they don't realize that they are actually in government. They're the ones who come up with the budgets. They're the ones who allocate resources. So Murai's got a very valid expectation that the National Assembly and Senate will serve Murai's interest. So let them, I don't know whether you were around then, but there are times when you had James Orengo at the National Assembly, when you had Martin Shikuku, George Anyona, when people you actually would listen to the National Assembly, and at the end of the session, you are knowledgeable. But today at some stage when you are following proceedings, there are some names which you cannot name here, but you need an energy drink. You need to get coffee for you to go through the process. Yeah, okay. We look forward to conversations anchored on Murai's interest, but more important, focus on Murai's interests. You know, economic diplomacy. Then Nyaribo says that Kenyans have been going out. Of course they have, but when an administration comes and gives you an enabling environment, then it becomes more exciting.
Okay, well noted, gentlemen. So, any of you football fans, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, as we finalize, just to break the water, you know?
I don't think, well, I'm not much of a man when it comes to soccer, so I understand there's a tournament going on tonight.
Not your cup of tea.
Not my cup of tea.
So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your input right here. We've taking a look at Ecitizen, what it offers the Kenyan Mwananchi, equally taking a look at the concept and the issue of disregarding court orders and Ruto's foreign trips as we finalized with the parliament entry. Just a tidbit of information. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jesse Rogers, Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst, Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate. Asanteni sana for your time and blessed week. My name is Jesse Rogers. Good evening.